Most people think of World War I as mud, trenches and misery, but very few stop to ask how millions of soldiers actually cooked, boiled water and stayed alive in places where open fires were often impossible. Artillery, gas attacks and aerial observation made visible flames dangerous. Fuel was scarce, conditions were wet and time mattered. Out of this environment came a class of compact survival stoves so efficient and reliable that they quietly shaped modern outdoor cooking, yet were largely forgotten once the war ended. Not because they failed, but because they worked too well for a world that quickly moved on. What survived was the technology. What vanished was the story. Why trench warfare forced a radical rethink of heat and cooking. Traditional campfires were liabilities in World War I. Smoke revealed positions. Fires took time to build. Wet fuel failed constantly. Soldiers needed something that could boil water fast, burn clean, and work in rain, mud, and freezing temperatures. This pressure produced small, pressure-fed liquid fuel stoves that ran on kerosene or petrol. They were compact, shielded from wind, and capable of producing intense heat with minimal fuel. These stoves became lifelines in trenches and forward positions. So, pressure stoves quietly became survival tools, not just comforts. Many of these designs were actually based on pre-war civilian stoves, like the old Swedish Primus, but, wartime use pushed them harder than any expedition ever had before. Soldiers relied on them to sterilize water, heat up their rations, thaw out frozen equipment, and, crucially, to prevent hypothermia. Unlike traditional fires, these stoves could be used for just a few moments and then extinguished right away. That kind of control honestly saved lives. Sometimes just a few minutes of heat could mean the difference between developing trench foot and getting circulation back to frozen limbs. The efficiency of these stoves, it really did border on unbelievable for the time. A well-tuned pressure stove could bring water to a boil in just a few minutes, using only a small amount of fuel. The clever burner design vaporized the liquid fuel before ignition, producing a hot, blue flame with almost no smoke at all. This wasn't accidental. Vaporization meant, more complete combustion. More heat per drop of fuel, less waste, and, less visibility. Modern backpacking stoves still rely on the same principle, actually. Why these stoves disappeared from public memory after the war? After the First World War, attention shifted to larger field kitchens and, peacetime comforts. The small survival stove didn't fit the narrative of victory or reconstruction. It wasn't heroic, it wasn't decorative. It was really just purely functional. As industrial heating expanded and, electricity spread, the idea of a self-contained, fuel-sipping stove kinda lost relevance for civilians. What remained were just fragments of the design, repackaged decades later for hikers and mountaineers. The stove wasn't erased by force. It was erased by neglect. How this World War I technology directly shaped modern outdoor and survival gear. If you've ever used a backpacking stove, you're using World War I logic. Pressurized fuel delivery, controlled airflow, wind-resistant burner heads, compact storage. What changed was marketing, not physics. Even today, liquid fuel stoves outperform many modern options in extreme cold, where gas canisters fail. That's not coincidence. It's inheritance. Why this stove mattered beyond cooking. Hot food improves morale. Warm water prevents disease. The ability to produce heat quickly reduces stress and fatigue. In trench conditions, these effects compounded daily. Survival wasn't about comfort. It was about maintaining function under constant strain. These stoves supported that quietly, without recognition. So, how can modern survivalists actually apply those World War I stove principles today? Well, the lesson isn't to hunt down antique hardware, not at all. It's really about understanding the priorities. Choose systems that actually work when the weather turns bad. Favor fuel flexibility, so you're not stuck with just one option. And perhaps most importantly, learn maintenance and repair. A modern liquid fuel stove, when it's paired with just some basic know-how, really does mirror what World War I soldiers relied on. Practice priming, because it's not always as simple as it looks. Learn how to clean jets, since a clogged stove is, well, pretty useless. And don't forget to understand fuel storage safety. These skills, honestly, matter quite a lot when supply chains fail. Why does history keep repeating this lesson, eh? Every major conflict and expedition, they rediscover the same truth. Simple, reliable heat saves lives. The tools that deliver it, well, they rarely get remembered unless they fail. But those WWI stoves didn't fail. They succeeded quietly. So, what does this forgotten stove teach us about survival design? The most powerful survival tools are often the least celebrated, They don't look impressive. They don't demand attention. They just work day after day under conditions most modern systems aren't really designed to handle. That's why this WWI survival stove deserves remembering. Not as a myth, but as a reminder of what truly matters when everything else strips away. If this deep dive into forgotten wartime survival technology added value to your understanding of history and preparedness, well, do subscribe to the channel for more serious, research-driven content. And share this video with fellow history enthusiasts and survival-minded viewers. These lessons, after all, were paid for dearly.